Our guest today is going to do a deep dive on Tesla's Robotaxi launch, FSD, and Optimus plans. Realistically, what milestones can Tesla hit in 2025? Some of the questions he'll answer include what's achievable for Robotaxis, FSD, and factory automation? What are the misconceptions about Optimus? And is it closer to real-world use than most think? Where is Tesla focusing most of its strategic energy right now? Are the big bets on AI, robotics, or something less visible? Tad Park is CEO of Volt Equity and is the portfolio manager for TESL, a fund that concentrates on Tesla-related instruments, but has now launched the very first Tesla-focused exchange-traded fund. The ticker symbol TESL is now trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Welcome, Tad. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here.
Last time we did a video with you and Alexandra, and you explained your fund, the exchange-traded fund, the ETF, TSLL. Today, you're going to teach us about your thinking about how is Robotaxi, FSD, and Optimus, how are they going to be launched? A little bit more detail about the milestones. I appreciate that. Tell us what we're going to learn today.
Yeah. So first thing is about Austin, and in particular, why Austin? Just a little bit about the thinking behind it. What are some challenges to the launch? Because we're very, very closely watching the launch of FSD, because this is FSD and Optimus are the two most exciting initiatives within Tesla. Even in my opinion, even though energy is growing by leaps and bounds and all that other stuff, it's really the AI applications that are really exciting.
Yeah. So and we're here. Yeah. We're very close, and we're going to walk through the milestones. Yeah. Okay. This is great. So this is inside Tesla's next move, the very detailed next moves on Robotaxis and FSD and an Optimus. Great. Walk us through.
Sure. If we can go to next couple of slides. Great. One more. Okay. So why Austin? And basically, Austin has enough EVs, right? It's different from Dallas and other cities. And it's actually a supportive regulatory environment. I think one thing that people sometimes miss is you would think that California is the best place, right? But California was the state that essentially kicked Elon out of the state during COVID and said, go eat rocks. And then Elon said, fine. So actually, very ironically, California and, politics aside, like it was not friendly for Tesla. and basically the policy was a little bit counterintuitive, because even during COVID times, they were subsidizing electric vehicles, but only if it was union labor. They were trying to add those little clauses in. And so on the surface, you're saying that you're trying to accelerate electric vehicle adoption, climate change, all this stuff. But if you put in those sneaky little clauses, then you're actually getting rid of the biggest EV maker in the United States, Tesla, because they don't use union labor. So those tiny little things are like sneaky ways of, on the surface, looking like you're supporting electric vehicles when you're actually subsidizing gas cars and you're slowing down Tesla, and Tesla's the leader in helping fight climate change. So there's a lot of things like that. And in that political landscape, we only talk about politics because it's actually relevant to Tesla in this case. You have this. But now there is actually an administration that is okay with Tesla doing this. They're not going to try to put all these stumbling blocks from regulatory standpoint. And as an asset manager, this has been like a huge concern of mine, where I talk to other people. I even talk to some lawyers and things. They're like, hey, the technology might get there, but you don't know, like with politics, they will totally kill any initiative. Right. So it doesn't even matter if you're ahead. If you're not in the pockets of the politicians, you're just rocked. So luckily, there is someone who's okay with it, and this is the time for EV rollout to happen, and there is only 4 years to do it. So this is like, especially if if the political pendulum changes in the next administration, that would not be good. So we're cheering on the rollout. We want the rollout to happen as fast as possible in a reasonable way. It's close to the Gigafactory. Elon likes to work next to the place, like see it firsthand. It's just a very it just makes sense that it's going to be in Austin. In California, they already have a autonomous vehicle like framework, but it's been heavily politically influenced by Waymo. There's all these things you have to do. There's all these regulations and everything. And they just like pile on the bureaucracy like crazy. It's not actually conducive for Tesla. And that's why they don't actually log quote unquote autonomous miles in California. And everyone says in a chart, right, that Tesla is behind because they're showing like California's autonomous miles, when in reality, that has nothing to do with who's closer to a robotaxi rollout. It's just who can play the game, right? And for me, having worked in San Francisco for 10 plus years, when I look outside, I see Cruise, Waymo, like I see all the different cars, and they keep going around. At least for many, many years, I can predict if they're going to go right or left, and they go right. And they keep going right and right and right in circles. And it's just ridiculous, right? But that's so like, but then you see firsthand how ridiculous it is if you're here in San Francisco. And on paper, they say, oh, we had no intervention for X amount of miles. But that's nothing. You never stress the system. And it was only to make it look good on paper so that you can win from a political bureaucratic point of view, but not from actually solving the problem of driving. Like, what are the hardest problems? What are the edge cases? Those are the cases that Tesla is tackling head on. So if we can go into the next slide.
Yeah, that's interesting. Most people assume that California is the place to be. It's tech forward. That's where this launches first. But you're right. It's actually much more regulatory heavy. People surprised about that. Launching first in Austin makes sense, but they will be expanding in California too. Right. This was a great slide.
Yeah. So I think it's very important to see that. What are all the different things? Basically, in the beginning, I know everybody wants millions of cars to just turn on like instantaneously, and we know that there's 20 car or like about 10 to 20 cars as revealed by Elon with the latest information. It's going to be a very, very small rollout, but counterintuitively, if he rolled out with thousands of cars, that would actually be bad for us as investors, because inevitably there's going to be interventions. There's going to be all these things that happen. And in this case, going slower is actually going faster, because once you figure it out, and you figure it out in Austin, and this is what Elon has said, you figure it out in a couple cities, then you just turn it on. Like it's just a very common like technical iteration approach that's common in the Valley in California and a lot of tech companies. And it's that kind of iterative approach. You solve in a small level first, and then you roll out everywhere. And at the same time, Tesla is getting a lot of regulatory thumbs up at the NHTSA level, at the federal level, because a nightmare scenario is every city wants to put their tendrils in and say, oh, we have our own way of doing things. You have to give us taxes. You have to fill out these forms. You have to do all this stuff. That would be a nightmare, because every single time you cross the city or something, it's like, oh, it's a different regulation. It's a different geofence. That's the way that Waymo wants to do it, because they want to slow down Tesla as much as possible. But that's not the way that Tesla wants to do it. They want a nationwide rollout. So I'm sure they have something in the fine print where Austin has agreed not to essentially stranglehold Tesla and say, hey, if it works here, we're going to pile on our regulations here. So Next is you still have to support, it's manual, but you still have to support the effort. So the Gigafactory is nearby. A lot of Tesla employees are nearby. Do you have the right, iterative ability, and you have everything. So basically, in terms of some threats is NHTSA.
Threats.
Good thing that NHTSA is somewhat on Tesla's side for the next 4 years. And then, but no guarantees. And then there's Waymo and Cruise and Zeus and everything. And we can't just discount them fully. But yeah, they are night and day difference. So I guess we can go into that a little bit later. But in terms of this first mover advantage, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. They are first mover advantage for their approach. For like not a, on the surface, it looks the same. On the surface, it looks like they're the same as Waymo and everything else. And Ashok, the head of AI FSD over at Tesla, was on a recent interview, and some Tesla haters, posted the interview saying, "Oh, Tesla is 2 years behind," but they took it out of context. What he was saying is 2 years behind on the city by city rollout, but that doesn't mean behind at all. Actually, there were a million reasons why Tesla's ahead for the nationwide rollout. A big difference. So it's kind of like a tortoise and the hare. It seems like Tesla's behind, but they are essentially first mover on AI, fully AI driven autonomy, not like basically fake playthings. Like basically. The history with self-driving cars is that there was a DARPA competition, right? And that's the defense project for like skunk work projects. And in order to win the competition, because you don't have that much data and not much video, you had to use Lidar. Like that's just the fact of the matter at that time, right?
Yeah.
But then in reality, though, it's like what gets you there doesn't get you there, So even though that's how you win that competition, and out of that Cruise was born and all this stuff, and if you look at the backstory, like why are they so into LiDAR? It's because of that. But how do you solve nationwide autonomy? Well, counterintuitively, again, you have to get rid of the LiDAR and go fully camera. Because, how are you going to get millions of cars? Even if you get the cost of LiDAR down, from $75,000 LiDAR down to $2,000, you have 5 LiDARs at $2,000. That's still $10,000 extra in a car. You can't sell millions of cars in order to do AI, an AI first approach. So what's very interesting about this rollout is there's so many layers of strategy, and Elon has thought through so much strategy. Like when we only see the first move, there's 4 or 5 other moves that he's already thought through. And that's why he's repeatedly proves people wrong. People only see as there for, the first move, but Elon is a genius. Like people don't see that he already thought it through from a first principles point of view. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, if we can go into the next slide.
Yeah, I like that. First mover advantage. It depends on what this look like. Okay.
Yeah. So everyone, was very, very excited for many, many years. And people just say, hey, it's always a year away, always a year away. And is this time any different or whatever? I think it's very important to see the context. So I was deep into Tesla since like 2018. And personally made a lot in Tesla investments that made me want to be a Tesla ETF manager and just help people manage the ups and downs of Tesla. And I think mainly during that time, he kind of needed to sell the vision. For a lot of startups and tech ideas, you want people to buy into the vision, and that buy-in funds the rollout of other things, and you can actually make reality happen. So people are confusing that aspect of Elon when he first started SpaceX and he said, hey, we can go to Mars in like 5, 6 years, 10 years or whatever, that was crazy, So what people don't realize is he does that over and over. He does that for Boring Company. He does that for SpaceX, everything. Tesla. What he does is he asks the engineers, how long is this going to take? And they say, hey, to actually reuse rockets, maybe 30 years, 40 years. And then he says, okay, how can we do it in 5? And they're like, oh, that's impossible. That's impossible. And then they figure out, oh, okay, if we cut out this, I'll cut out this, then we can do it in 5. And then what actually ends up happening is it takes like 10 years, only 10 years, right?
Yep.
But then now you see magic like all the time with the SpaceX rockets like landing all the time, which was before considered impossible. He does the same thing. Like even with FSD, there's a bit of 5D checks going on. He doesn't actually mean 5 years. Like when he first said it, yes, that's just his management style. He needs to push everyone to the impossible, right? But actually what has happened is he's done that. There's been incredible progress in FSD. I was an early FSD beta user when there was dots all over the place. And then like basically it was not smooth looking. The graphic was not smooth looking and everything. And basically there were like 10 interventions, 15 interventions, all these interventions, like you could barely get down the street, right? But then what you see is like, then it slowly went to 14. And then it was 14 for a long time. And then it becomes like 12, 10. And then suddenly like there actually is a dramatic decrease. Like 6 months goes down and then it cuts in half. So basically what's happening is it's an exponential increase. It seems like nothing happens, and then suddenly it's an exponential increase. And you see this over and over and over from a AI perspective in terms of rollout. It's not linear. So in a traditional business, you're like, hey, if you made 25% progress by now, and you're okay, it's going to take 4 years, it's going to take 5 years, right? And everyone mistakes this. This is a different beast. Like if you look at what happened with voice recognition, for example, you see all these crappy voice recognition apps, like you can barely dictate into your phone. People remember like you couldn't dictate, basically it sucked.
Yep.
And then suddenly it exponentially increased and the number of errors went down so much that there was an explosion of Alexa, Siri, everything, because now it can understand what you're saying. It can understand your accent. It can understand even who you are, right? And do different things depending on what your voice sounds like, right? So, but then that all happened all at once, like in the span of 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're at that inflection point, and Elon sees that, and everyone who's paying attention sees that this is the inflection point. So people who don't understand, they think linearly. They're like, okay, if you think linearly, yeah, FSD is 10 years away, But if you actually see what's happening, I think Elon's correct that next year we could potentially see an explosion of cars that come online that would become robotaxis. And I love this aspect, like this whole dark horse aspect of Elon. Like you can tell that he's like a gamer, and he just loves just proving people wrong, So there's all these people there, all these naysayers, all this stuff, and then suddenly like the fleet turns on. And I think that's going to be an amazing day. And we are approaching that day a lot closer than we think, a lot closer than most people think, because our human brains cannot understand how exponential curves work. So
it's surprising that there are, like you say, 90+% of people probably aren't understanding this, and they'll be shocked when it happens. But you're watching it right in front of your eyes. People are seeing this exponential curve happening with compute, with AI, just the Grok and so forth, and ChatGPT, and the general person out there, employee out there knows they've seen it. But yet, and then when you talk about full self-driving, they go, no, that won't happen. They still, despite proving one example after another example, and they still won't accept it.
Yeah. And based on that, if we can go to the next slide. So if there's a captain of a ship and you know that you're about to find treasure when you hit the island, right? You're going to be a billionaire. Do you think the captain's just gonna like quit,
Of
like jump ship?
course not. Yep.
Yeah, of course not, right? But I think if you see the whole picture and you see that, okay, the Waymo guy, the CEO ditches, all these people ditch. You know,
Yep.
Uber like gives up on their self-driving. There's so many like self-driving companies that they just kind of get acquired, even though they say that they're really close.
Mhm.
They know what's coming. Like, why are they not staying on the ship? So on the surface, Dan O'Dowd and all these people don't understand the technology are saying that Tesla's behind and all this other stuff. But in reality, Tesla is very, very close. And it's because of their approach is completely different. I'm sure that the CEOs of these self-driving companies, or at least before they jump ship, know that Tesla is ahead, and they know that their efforts are futile. But then because they're not like dumb people, but they're going to stay on for the salary and everything else, whatnot. But from a technological point of view, lidar actually is useless. So lidar is what is on Waymo's, cruises, like nearly everything else. So it's kind of like a training wheels. I had one of my kids. One person had training wheels. She took forever to learn how to bike,
Mhm.
and she
Mhm.
didn't fall, but she like took forever. And then
Mhm.
another one of my kids only used a balance bike, so no training wheels. And then he went into
Mhm.
a bike and could do it like no problem, first time
Right.
actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And
It's a
they are
crutch now.
doing training wheels to, in the short term, look like they are good or quote
Mhm.
unquote advanced in order to get um, money from investors. But for Elon, he doesn't care if he looks like a kid that's falling off the bike all the time. He
Mhm.
only cares that he gets to the end result, which is good driving, safer than a human, faster than others. So he is actually looking 3 points ahead.
Mhm.
So what we're seeing here is just an example proof. When people say that LiDAR is the way LiDAR works is it's a laser. A laser hits the object, it waits for it to come back, and then that time period is how far away the thing is, right?
Mhm.
Then it's saying, okay, don't run into this obstacle, don't run into this obstacle, etc., right? But the problem with the problem with that is like, okay, that's a thing. Is that useful? Yes. If you had no camera, yes, it's useful. You don't want to run into things. Is it going to win you the DARPA toy competition? Yes, it will. But what happened, and this happened around 2016, is like it's proven that AI already knows how far away the thing is, from pictures. So you
Mhm.
can get a picture. It's not even a video, just a picture. And that second image is showing a depth map, meaning the probabilistic likelihood that it is X amount of way. Because like actually as humans, that's what we do. If we see something, we think that we might hit into it, right? Then if that's what we do, that's enough. You know how far away it is. It's the limiting factor is the brain. It's the brain that was not smart enough to interpret the picture. That's why we were relying on the training wheels, which is lidar, right? So but if the brain was smart enough, then you no longer need lidar, and that's
So
why.
what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a vision only camera stereo input, but then you can actually using just vision only to do depth map and point cloud without needing lidar? Is that what this point is of this,
Yep,
or is
yep.
yeah?
It's showing that you can do all three without needing lidar, but
And then
it
the
also
lidar is
shows.
basically the point cloud, and it can do that. And so it's not that vision is not able to do what lidar is. It's just that before you needed AI to be able to work this out.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened before, like way back then, 2016 or whatever, is like it took a long time to process that, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in order to
With those
get the
chips.
depth map, it took
Yeah,
a long time. In order to understand what was going on, it took a long time to process it because the brain was deficient. So you
yeah. The
used
compute.
the point cloud, i.e., the training wheels. But if this proves that from an image you can get depth map and point cloud, like from first principles, is it really necessary? Is Lidar really
Right.
necessary? You can get the
Gotcha.
same information from a picture,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, and that's something that a lot of investors are missing. For traditional Wall Street is just saying, "Oh, look at Waymo. They're ahead. They're in 2 cities." And Tesla's only starting in Austin, 1 city. And they don't realize from a from a fundamental point of view, Tesla's way ahead. They were just on a balance spike this whole time, and they're
Yep.
about to start riding. He said this in a Q1. Elon said this in a Q1 earnings call, and this is where we're approaching the safer than human most conditions, and essentially that's the threshold where regulators are going to be okay with a rollout of autonomy. So I think one thing to temper in terms of expectations is, based on our research, we don't think that it will be way safer than a human. I think theoretical max. We know the theoretical max is it can be way safer than a human. With current hardware, but I think in reality, like for a rollout, it might be slightly safer than a human.
Mhm.
So we don't want to kind of move the ball and just say, hey, regulators, it has to be 5 times safer than a human in order for robotaxi to be a thing. At least as investors, from a safety perspective, from everything, a tech forward perspective, I personally believe that it would be fine if it was 1.5 or even 2x safer than a human. Then why not, right? Like just have some safe fallback logic. If you see some really crazy construction scenario, you can't handle it, then just have it pull over, or just certain things. But for the most part, I think that holding back the rollout is ultimately unsafe, if we hold back this technology, and it's coming really soon. So next slide. We see this debate on Twitter, and everyone thinks, oh, Uber doesn't have cars, doesn't have drivers, and they're just tech, pure digital tech, and there's no way that Tesla can surpass the market cap of Uber, and they have these kind of arguments, but that market cap of Uber currently is like 185 billion. So it's a lot smaller than Tesla. So they're saying, hey, there's no way that you can go beyond Uber. But what they don't realize is that's not how it works, because Uber has to pay the driver, and Uber does not own the car. Like they're saying it as if it's a disadvantage. But what if you sell the car and you sell the subscription and you sell everything? Right? Then you don't have to pay $60,000 a year for Uber, like for the labor cost. You don't have to pay all this other stuff, and that all increases the cost of the ride usage. So if you can cut down the ride usage, it's actually very like price. That's going to be very disruptive for Uber, and it's a very bad sign. So it's very interesting because there are like real people. Like I'm just amazed that there are real Wall Street people that think that I don't know. I don't know how much they're actually telling the truth or not, but they actually think Uber is going to do well in the autonomous rollout, because they're like, oh, who's going to coordinate all the rides? It's going to be Uber. But from a technical point of view, is it really that hard to coordinate rides? It's like, it's not hard. Whoever has this fleet of self-driving cars, they will have all the power.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty obvious at this point. I mean, even Waymo does not need Uber. Waymo launched in San Francisco without Uber. Now they're launching in Austin with Uber, but they didn't need it. People downloaded the app. The people hailed Waymos without the app. It's like they were doing ride hail. So just that alone, it's like you don't need an Uber to be able to offer your service.
yeah, exactly. And you definitely don't need it. And I think basically they can undercut Uber, and they don't need a portion of the fees, which is very significant. And that will just change our driving and transportation landscape as we know it, right? There would be huge cut downs in parking lots. We'll have a lot more parks, being able to sleep in your car. It will be like a tectonic shift in the way life happens. You know, like just like when the iPhone came out, when all these different things came out, society changed. You know, that created social media and all this other stuff, you know, pros and cons, but basically society will change when self-driving cars come out. So um, the another key point here is the neural nets, not rules-based logic. So there's a lot of training wheels, you know, band-aids, all this other stuff where there's programmers saying, hey, if you see this sign, then do this. If you see this, then do that. It's not scalable. But if you just feed a whole bunch of video from millions of cars, then surprisingly, it can think. So, you know, that goes into Optimus, but we could probably move, and then it learns, and then there's Austin. So if we can move to the next.
Patiently waiting on my.
Turn that off. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is crazy. You know, this is basically the next logical next step. Why do we have to have people driving the car to the next thing, right? And in this case, Tesla's doing this today. It's finding a parking spot, but it's not always the same parking spot. It just knows what the parking spot is. You see it watch and wait if there's humans walking by, everything. So in a way, the rollout has already happened.
Yep.
And it's already kind of delivering themselves to the right spot. So we know like it's very, very close. So this is super exciting to see like real video. So if we could go to the next. So I don't think we need to be, I think sometimes, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's going to be crazy. Like the millions of fleets are, you know, cars are going to turn on next month. The thing is, you know, in our fund, if we're not right on the timing, then it's not good because we use options and different things. And we try to be roughly right on the timing of these things. So we just, I mean, it's not going to be, I mean, the truth of the matter is it's not going to be millions of cars. It's going to be a small rollout. Does that mean they're not going to have millions of cars or like 1 million cars next year? No, it can potentially be 1 million cars next year. And that's the mind-blowing thing, is that the rate of progress is going to be insane. So Optimus, so they're going to start using Optimus in the factory. And then they're consistently having increase in driving hours for FSD. That's the thing that we're looking for because that's what feeds the brain. And then they've actually invested enough in AI capital. So regarding that, and then you know there's FSD subscription. But what the AI capital thing is, what's so exciting about it is basically it's been proven, like in programming, because I have a background in software engineering. In programming, sometimes it's like figuring out the solution of the problem. That's like super, super hard, right? But if the problem can be solved with compute, that is crazy. Like that's super exciting for a programmer, you know? So essentially they have all these charts and everything. The performance of the model improved with compute. Then that's the easiest way to solve it because we know that the economic opportunity for self-driving is insane. And if it's only limited by compute, then that's so exciting because it de-risks so many things. And they saw an actual, you know, level of improvement based on compute, based on amount of video that's fed in. And that's why Elon has been going so crazy in ramping up hardware, not only for Tesla, but also for XAI and everything, because it's a crazy race as to how fast you can spin up the data server, because then you can have the results that you want, you know, in that amount of time.
Yeah, this is, I think it's fairly, some people think it's simplistic, but I think you're right. That is the key metric. If you grow compute, they've already shown it in the past. They've shown it that if they grew a certain amount of compute, then they saw 1,000 times improvement in FSD, reduction in critical disengagements. And if you just carry that forward by adding, you know, they can basically know at this point how many gigawatt, hundreds H100 equivalents do they need? They can get there. Then that's what's going to get them to the not only 10,000 miles per disengagement, but eventually 770,000 miles per disengagement. It really is kind of tied to that metric. And so That's it. It's about a matter of time for them to launch the compute. And that's how he knows. That's why the previous quote was, it's not if, it's a matter of time. It's happening.
Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of when. And that's why we're so close that people at Tesla can actually see. Like they can actually plot now. Before you couldn't plot, but now you can actually plan rollouts. It's really insane that how close we are. So the next slide is just about from the federal level, because this is also a risk of the rollout. And basically, they ask for detailed information about FSD with sun glare and fog. I'm a hyper bull, as you can tell, on Tesla. But this is where I kind of differ, at least in our research and my own personal driving with FSD. Yeah, it does have some trouble. Like I'm not just going to say, oh, FSD is so crazy. It's great. It's like better than a human. And me saying that for 4 years straight. I've been fairly, hopefully, unbiased in the way that I've said FSD's progress was, so that when I say right now that we're close, people actually will believe me that we're close, But one thing that it does struggle with is the glare, at least for me. But I think one thing that it addresses is FSD hardware 4 does address this in some way. So I'm actually on hardware 3.
So that's a huge difference right there, by the way. Okay, so just a big thing I've been trying to tell people. There's a huge difference between hardware 4 and 3. I own a Model 3 hardware 3, and I own a Model 3 hardware 4. And hardware 4 is much, much better. Secondly, my hardware 4 had issues with glare. Every time I drove the car, I would have glare warnings. I brought it into service. They cleaned up the camera underneath the rear view mirror because it's fogged in there. And once they cleaned that up, I've not had a single glare warning anymore. So if you have glare warnings, I would just encourage you to take a look underneath your windshield to see if there's any kind of fog there. And because you can think about why that's happening, right? The sun is hitting it, and because of the fog, it basically obscures it quite easily. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe I'm wrong, but I bring it in and it's fixed it. It's a known issue by the new hardware 4 cars, the new Model 3s. They knew that this is an issue. So, but I'm not sure about the old Model 3s, why that's happening too. But I'd encourage you to get that fixed.
Yeah, thanks for the tip. Yeah, I'll go check it out for the call. And but basically with hardware 4, there's 2 cameras as well. And even if the sun is at that exact angle, the second camera that's below will not have that angle. So there's still going to be visibility. Mm-hmm. So I think they've solved it on many levels. Like, it actually is an issue, but it's not an issue in hardware 4. So I think it's exciting, but it just means there's going to be some difficulty. The rollout is like, what's the implication for investors? Well, the implication is every single hardware 4 vehicle, I don't think we should realistically think that it will just turn on and be part of the fleet. In my opinion, I think the hardware 4 vehicles are going to be the ones that can turn on and be part of the fleet.
Yeah, not the hardware 3s is what you meant to say. Yep, and what they'll have to do is upgrade it. And they talked about it last earnings, that they'll have to upgrade it, and they'll just go ahead and upgrade it to include it part of Robotaxi. They'll upgrade it on your behalf because the margins and economics is so huge. The other comment I want to make about fog, rain, and sun glare. Yes, it's a consideration. But what happens when humans drive in fog, rain, and sun glare? Well, what you should do if it's heavy fog or rain, you should stop driving. That's what we do. Many of us stop driving during that time. So yeah, maybe you can't offer Robotaxi in perfect conditions, but just be like a human. Stop driving. Don't offer it during that period of time. So it's like if it's heavy fog, no one should be driving. Not even the Lidar people who think that the Lidar is going to help see through fog. No, you don't. You can't see it.
Yeah. And that's an elegant solution, right? Because you just for safety reasons, you just don't have it available. And same thing with taxi service, right? A taxi service may just not be available when there's crazy weather conditions.
In here, one winter, we had such a huge snowfall. there was no taxis. They weren't around because why? They got stuck. So just pretty logical. So why it's not a big, it's just like a normal humans would stop doing taxi service during a huge weather condition. There's no need that has to be pushed to the far end like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, very closely related to FSD rollout. It's super exciting. I think it's very, very close, but closely related is Optimus.
Yeah.
So, recently that video, it was super exciting. There's like a video of Optimus doing household chores. Yeah, that one. That is absolutely crazy. Like I had to throw out the trash. I feel the pain myself, but this seems pretty mundane, but it actually is not mundane at all. So robots have been able to do things that are like, this point to this point in a car factory, like install these different things, right? But fine motor movement, these kind of things, it has not been able to do. And it's been like one of the biggest challenges. So even with the Model 3 rollout, I know Elon wanted everything to be automated, but one mistake that he looked back on is he said it was too early for automation. Well, because the little wires and all that stuff, it was too wiggly. A robot could not handle wires. So they actually invented a patent for like snapping things, and it was easier for robots to install like that kind of wiring, right? But nowadays, like we saw, the Optimus can do that kind of thing. The things with like flexible things and all this other stuff. So just like FSD, the end solution may not be the same as the beginning solution, right? So people are thinking like, oh, Boston Dynamics, they're ahead because their thing can do backflips. They're ahead because they have a crazy dog that can lift like 100 pounds, right? But they don't realize that for 20, 30 years, like, Jetsons was around. Like everyone knew that robots could do robot things, right? Like ever since 70s or 80s or whatever, right? But what was the problem? The problem was it was like in the Wizard of Oz, like when you literally don't have a brain. That was the problem. So they had demo videos of robots like folding laundry for a long time. But in the background, it was all teleoperated and people had remote controls and they were folding the laundry like furiously in the background, right? And they're like, look, the future's coming. And what happened? 10 years went by, 20 years went by, nothing happened. So the actual actuators of the like things, like people are focusing on the totally wrong thing. They think it's the actuators of like the hands and all that stuff that is the game changer. It's not. It's actually the AI. And that's why now is the time to be super excited about Optimus, is that finally the robot has a brain. And what happens when the robot has a brain? We were never limited by hardware. It was when you have a brain, you can do fine motor things. It doesn't require the robot to do backflips like Boston Dynamics, but it requires a brain to fold laundry. It requires a brain to take out the trash and do all this other stuff because it doesn't fit perfectly in the mold. And this is the thing that most people are not talking about enough, especially in the investment community. They don't know how to evaluate the robotics field. Like just like they don't understand how to evaluate the competitive landscape of the FSD self-driving field, they have no idea how to evaluate from a technological point of view the humanoid robot field. Because if you even say in the same breath that Boston Dynamics dog Spot is anywhere near Optimus, like, they have no idea what they're talking about. Like,
they haven't figured it out. Yeah.
They should focus on investments that are backwards looking.
Yeah.
Like
if
railroads
you look at
and like those
Boston
kind of things.
Dynamic, the Boston Dynamic dog or the bots that are walking around the factory, if you look closely at the videos, there's QR codes. And so they're being told that when you see a QR code, that's a door, you have to press this. The other thing, of course, is that it's all coded. The entire thing is coded. So when you see the thing doing backflips, they coded that to them, and and it's not a one-shot thing. They're playing little clips at the same time, and they take hours and days and weeks and months to code that specific move. So it's not scalable. It's not anything that it learned. It's done for demo. It's done for raising money, trying to prove that it's succeeding, but it's nowhere near scalable or sale. But people assume that that's the case, and they're just not. It's not the case. Yeah.
So, and they were acquired, and so they achieved their goal of fooling people. But then again, the solution to get to step 1 is actually the wrong solution to get to step 5 and to have a full, robot with a brain. So they're not ahead at all, actually. So on the surface, it looks like they're ahead, but they're not actually ahead. And that's why, also realizing why does the robot have to be humanoid? Because a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want a humanoid robot. Like, what about Spot? Like, why don't you do what all the other robotics companies are doing? Because they walk all weird, they do all these cool things, and they can flip 360 degrees and all that stuff. Like, why don't you do that kind of stuff? And maybe Optimus can do 360 degrees, but it's not like the strongest robot. It's not the fastest robot, but it has a potential to be the smartest robot. And that's why Elon says it's not even close, because what will happen is it can be trained on video. And if you have a dog form factor, you can't show a dog opening a door or taking out the trash or anything.
It's got to use its mouth, not its hands for that particular task.
So it can't learn. Yeah.
It's better if it's similar to a human.
Yeah. So now it can be fed all these YouTube videos and stuff and just know how to do everything. And I think there's also going to be a moment where people realize, oh, okay, you only know after the fact. Why did it have to be humanoid? Why does it have all these things? Elon thought about these things way ahead of time. So it actually has the correct form factor, correct way of learning. The recent breakthrough, there was a Tesla person on Twitter that worked at Tesla, specifically said that it was zero shot. So they did not do all of these little adjustments like Boston Dynamics to get it to dance, to do all these things. In simulation, it said in sim, real to sim, right? In simulation, it got it right. So why is that so profound? Well, it's profound because it can have a realistic world, right? Of it seems like the world, all these weird scenarios and stuff. Then it can just learn by going to YouTube and ingesting all the videos. And then it can try to do it in its own world. And in the beginning, it might fall, right? But it's reinforcement learning. So over millions and millions of attempts, it learns just like a baby does until it knows and it grades itself that it's perfect. Then once it's perfect, you turn it on and then the robot does things that are magical. It's like, how did it do that? And they did the proof of concept. I think that's the thing that's so exciting and so insane. And I have not seen a single asset manager that specifically talked about this. There are certain things that are important for certain companies, But for Optimus, it's actually the proof of concept that it can go from sim to real. And we have witnessed history in the making in the past couple of weeks where they have actually proved that this is possible. So just imagine how rapidly this is going to improve now that they can scalably give Optimus a brain.
That was great, Ted. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the point you're making is if you're an investor, you're an asset manager, you're trying to decide which companies you don't want to be fooled. And it's so easy to fool somebody who's not a tech person. And you're focusing on the wrong metrics, right? What you're saying is that you gotta understand everything in life is always it's optimized for some particular goal. And so, on the Boston Dynamic robot, at first it was pneumatic, and which is dangerous. You cannot be near a pneumatic machine like the Boston Dynamic robot, because if it just does one wrong move, you're dead. Any human near it will die. It's made out of strong metal, and you can't do that. It was there and it was massive and bulky because they had no intention of selling this thing. It was there for a research purpose, and but people have assumed that, oh my God, it can do that, and it was all coded, right? 100% coded. So it was optimized for a very specific thing. The Chinese bots, they're optimized it for running as fast as possible, just again to prove that we're really cool. We can do these backflips. But Tesla, Dr. Scott Walter, I just interviewed him recently. He said Tesla optimized their bot for standing for long periods of time. And they examined all of the use cases in the factory, for example. You don't need somebody to run in a factory. In fact, Elon has said 5 miles per hour is the maximum. There's no need to run any faster than that. And so standing is more important than anything else. And so that's what they optimized it for. So there's a trade-off, right? Scott Walter was saying that, yeah, Optimus is designed with the hips. It cannot play soccer. It can't kick the way a professional soccer ball. Why do you need it to kick? You don't.
Yeah.
So that's the design. Now, and so then you were saying that the metrics that you should follow, it takes you a lot longer because you're not trying to necessarily just, pass a test or win a contest or, you're trying to solve for, right? Which is the first principles. We need something to work out of the box in any point, drive from any point A to any point B in the world. And you have to make millions of cars. And so it can't be more costly than a $25 video camera times 8. And then you've got to be able to scale this so that you can train it in all the edge cases. Can't just be coding everything. Now, they tried to code everything, and they would have done it that way if there was no other solution. But then they found out neural nets is the way to go, and that self-coded, is computer self-coding itself. And so then it became get as many videos as possible. But guess what? For some reason, Elon knew this, and every Tesla he's ever made since 2012 all had cameras, already are tracking videos, capturing all that data. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, what? He knew that all that data was going to be needed, and he offered it for free, and all that video was already being captured. And that's why we have an unassailable lead in terms of value for that. But
yeah, it's insane because people just think it's a backup camera or just, driver assist or something. But then all the car companies don't even realize you have to have 360 cameras. Like, they're not collecting the data. But Elon is so far ahead of them. It's like not even close. And same thing for Optimus. It's not optimized toward investor raising in the short term. Like, he could care less whether people invest in the short term, but he's optimized for winning. So if you really deep dive into how the actual actuators work, it's crazy. Like, when you close your hand, normally, like, if you close your hand as humans, even Optimus is better than humans actually at holding groceries because if you close your hand, it takes energy to keep it closed, but they actually have it as gears that ratchet up like this so that when you hold it, it's passive. It doesn't take any battery power to hold the groceries. And you only want to unlock it when you open the hand. And that's the most common work pattern. So then, yes, unlike the freak of nature Frankenstein robots that are out there where the fingers can go backwards and do all the stuff that would never happen in real life, they say, hey, you can't go in both directions, but guess what? It's not going to use as much battery power, So they are totally optimizing for the right thing and not for the short-term win. And super
Tesla's
exciting.
Choosing the right things, but we'll see what happens. That's why I'm saying that, I'm not saying Boston Dynamics, the new one, Atlas, the electric version, I'm not saying it's not going to succeed because it's optimized for other tasks. Maybe a certain task will be better. But we've been saying, it's not just the body. It's like, where are they getting? Where's their NVIDIA chips? Where's their supercomputer? Where's their video capturing that they're doing? Where's their, they've got a partnership with Hyundai, but we've not heard them say yet that they've got a factory building a certain amount of bots that they're going to make. So people just jump to conclusions because they saw a video of Atlas and they're saying they're a competitor. Sure, maybe they are right now, but we'll see what happens later.
Yeah, definitely. It was great talking to you, Herbert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tad. So Tad, you are the CEO of Volt Equity, and you're a portfolio manager for TESL. That's the very first exchange-traded fund that basically just focuses on Tesla as a stock, and then you buy instruments, so all sorts of things, stock options and other things too. And you're saying that you've been able to show that while it's all Tesla, you're trade around the edges, and so you're able to get higher than if you just held Tesla only, and don't get as low if Tesla falls as much as if you just held Tesla only. That's what you're saying, that you've got the software that's managing that, correct?
Yep, and that's what we attempt to do. Because I think that I would not want my investment in anything else other than Tesla for like the space, like the EV space for all this AI. It just totally makes sense. Like Tesla is ahead, so why dilute the portfolio? I mean, Tesla's a huge company already, so just managing around Tesla, I think, is a better way to have exposure to the thesis. So that's some of the idea behind that, and also believing that the mainstream media sometimes does not understand things. So
and so you as a manager, because you know Tesla so well, you're not fooled like the other asset managers who they hear this, they read this report, and then you go, yeah, they believe everything they read basically, and it's like, oh, dude, bias, not true.
Exactly, and we want to maintain some long-term bullish exposure, but it doesn't mean that we reduce it sometimes because we're like, hey, the media is going to go crazy right now, but we're going to ramp it up,
sentiment,
once people calm down. So. Yeah.
Cool. So follow Tad on his X account at TadPark0, and then check out the website, voltequity.com. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your slides and the explanation. I think the understanding of how to look at Tesla and what metrics to look at to gauge its success and the near-term milestones we're about to see. That was fun. Appreciate you, Tad. See you again next time.
Likewise. It was a pleasure.
Wow. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.